Hi everybody, thanks very much for joining us. I'm always feel a certain feeling of validation and relief when we have these info sessions and see that people still want to join this amazing program that my colleagues and I have crafted over the years. It began back in 2001 and it really stayed quite small for a number of years until about 11 years ago when it just started to explode, and it just makes us feel really great to see people continue to be interested in what we do here. So I'm the director of the Communication Leadership Master's Program, and our role tonight is really to give you a quick overview of the program. We know in one way or the other you've checked us out to a certain extent online or looked at our social media feeds. Give you an overview and then answer any questions you have. You'll be hearing from my colleagues tonight as well as some of our students and alumni who hopefully will have all the answers to your questions. But I want to start first with giving you an overview of the way I see the program. My job as director is really to provide the overarching framing and vision to what communication leadership is, and especially make it relevant and useful and valuable to our community around us. We are deeply embedded in the communications and economic ecosystem of this region and of our discipline. Just today, I had a meeting with the mayor of Seattle and a bunch of other leaders from our region, talking about homelessness, talking about how if we can solve some of the problems that we have here in an effective, unique Seattle way, those are solutions that can be shared with the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why I am so happy that our program, Communication Leadership, is based right here in Seattle, because it gives us the freedom to have a unique approach to what we do and how we present those solutions to the world. And it ties in so wonderfully with the mission statement of who we are, which is a connected learning community that fearlessly sparks change through story. And that's why I think we've done so well, is that we've been able to make those connections and to come up with that approach to communication. We are currently at the top of our game in terms of where our program is. Last year we welcomed 85 students to our program. Over the years, the numbers have continued to grow. And I believe the reason for that is that even as we're focused on providing this professionalized curriculum where people see that they can come here, get integrated into our community, get integrated into the region, and see what kind of organizations are doing communication the way that we have defined it, they also have an opportunity to affect some kind of change. This idea of sparking change is really important to us. And the fact that we do it through story is, I think, what resonates most with people when they apply to our program. And it's definitely what we see when we're looking at the applications, that stories are what provide the relevance and our purpose in terms of how we see the world. And that if you can come up with a great narrative or a great story to convince other people that your view of what you're trying to accomplish is real, authentic, and resonates with them, then you can collaborate at a scale and affect a change that is not possible otherwise. And so this idea of focusing on story is what makes our program unique, and the fact that we do tie it to the professional world of communication has been an amazing confluence with a lot of the companies and organizations in this region who also had the same bright idea at the same time we did and have started hiring our students in all walks of life. Increasingly, we're seeing a lot of our students getting jobs in content strategy, in user design, in thinking about how to be advocates within their own organizations around storytelling and also the technology that's being used. And I think that's the next pivot point for our program as we are looking at the next wave of technology, from artificial intelligence to biotechnology. There's going to be a whole question about what is the role of humans and how we make those connections. And we want our students, our alumni, our members of our community to be the ones who are constantly advocating for people first, for providing that relevant framing so that we can continue to proceed with purpose and affecting that change. I'm just going to refer to my notes before we move on here. In terms of the people who have been applying to our program, it has been a wonderful cross-section from across the country and around the world for many years. We have typically about 20 or 25% of our student body is from outside the United States. And at the same time, we have a good cross-section from coming across the country who have some foundation in the professional world or in communication, or have done some really novel work around that. Obviously, you get a chance when you're in this program to build a pretty powerful portfolio because our classes are so applied. But we are also looking for people who have a sort of an entrepreneurial approach to communication, understanding that this is a moving target right now. And so when we're looking at your applications, we're also thinking about what you have done, what you want to see in the world, what matters most to you, and how much does it align with, with what we're looking for and what our program's all about. And so we work on that in two ways in terms of bringing students in. We're thinking both in terms of how you work within the curriculum that we offer, which is incredibly rich. You'll be hearing from my colleague Anita Cross about that in a second. But we also have this incredible partnership program, which I think works in tandem. While you're doing things in the classroom, you're also doing amazing things outside of the classroom, which further extends the network and opportunities that you have. And so you'll hear about our partner program from my colleague Alex and Molly in a second as well. The bottom line is that our students come here for a very specific reason. In fact, some of my favorite applicants are those who said, I never thought about going to graduate school until I saw your website, or, you know, I've only applied to one program, this is it. I think it's because we offer such a unique worldview. And when I look at some of the success of our graduates, from somebody who's a digital media officer from Melinda Gates, to the project manager at Sonos, which is a smart speaker company, to the marketing head for Haptex, which is a startup VR company here in Seattle, they all have a diversity of objectives, of backgrounds, of the way they see the world, but they find it in a unified way that they can come in here, join a pretty remarkable community, and integrate themselves in different ways and go through this incredible transformation while they're in this program to do amazing things once they go back out into the world, having experienced communication leadership. And it really does begin with our curriculum. So with that, I'd like to call upon my colleague Anita Crofts to talk about some of the classes you would experience if you were successfully admitted into communication leadership. Anita.
So when you think about the Master of Communication and Digital Media, imagine that it's that content around which the humans are discussing, which is the emphasis to some extent of this particular degree. And when you think about that content, think about the creation of that form of content. Could be a video, could be a campaign, could be a website. Think about the dissemination of that content. How are we going to get it to the people that need to see this information? And then think about the measurement of the success of that content. How was that content received? Did it actually spark the change we were looking for? How can we improve upon that content in the future? So the Master of Communication in Digital Media has an emphasis on that kind of creation of superb content. If you think about the Master of Communication in Communities and Networks as having a more interpersonal dimension, take that content and instead look at it as, who do we need to see that content? Where are those audiences? How can those audiences receive that content? And then how can we engage with those audiences after we've done the measurement to improve upon the way that we've shared that content? So that interpersonal dimension, that community engagement around the content really is the added emphasis of that particular degree. These are very complementary degrees, we recognize that, and for that reason, our curriculum reflects that kind of complementary nature. We've come up with 8 particular areas that we feel are crucial to the modern communicator. Our courses fall within these 8 curricular themes. These all exist up on the website, so I want to assure any of you tonight that if you haven't had a chance to see these, this is not the only time you're going to see them. I encourage you to go to the website, but you'll see that we've taken some time, and this is a very deliberate process that we've gone through at our program. We feel very strongly that you're taking an opportunity to learn more about our program. We want to be as explicit as possible about the key attributes and techniques that we feel a modern professional communicator needs today. All of you at your seat, I believe, have this course guide. This has a little bit more granularity to it. It's going to give you a chance to see the particular courses that fall underneath these 8 thematic buckets. And I feel very strongly that when you're considering which particular degree is for you, the best thing you can do is to take a look at a sweep of classes for a particular year. All of the classes are indicated either Master of Communication in Digital Media, Master of Communication in Communities and Networks, or we have a high number of track-neutral courses, which we feel straddle those 2 degrees very seamlessly, and so for that reason we demarcate them as track-neutral. But that can be a good test in your first step in thinking about which is the degree that I'd like to apply for. Now, I'd also like to do a little side note and mention that we do have students that decide to do both degrees. That is an option. So if you really feel that these courses speak to you specifically in both ways, that's also an option as well. But wanted to take that time to lay that out for you. When it comes to the broader curriculum, along with this wonderful course guide, which you've all received tonight, we do have an ability on the website to look at every single class that's been offered over the last 2 years for both tracks in the program. And so this gives you a chance to read extended course descriptions, to read testimonials by students, to use the links back to the faculty members to see who teaches for us. And my colleague Akin Yashin will tell you a little bit more about the faculty in a moment. But I think it's important to point out that we aim to have as robust a curriculum as possible, as relevant as a curriculum as possible, and as responsive a curriculum as possible when it comes to what we hear from our community partners are the most sought out skill sets for professional communicators today. I want to speak just briefly a little bit about what are the two core classes that really anchor the Comm Lead experience for both degrees. We intentionally blend the two core required classes. There's one in the fall that I teach. There's a second class in the spring that Akin teaches, and she'll tell you about that. But these two classes are meant to be a chance for both MCCN and MCDMers to gain a level of identity as a blended cohort and to approach the topics that are near and dear to our graduate program around communication and leadership specifically. I'll tell you just a little bit about my class, which is Leadership Through Story and Community, Creativity in the Digital Age. This is every fall quarter. It is the required first fall quarter class for any student coming into the program. And it complements the electives which you then take to round out your Comm Lead experience. My core class looks at individual leadership. It looks at leadership through that lens of personal narrative and how who you are and the values that shaped you inform the way that you lead in your community today and the leadership ambitions that you have. The creativity dimension really defines the kind of work that students do in the class. Each student is asked to identify a communication challenge of their choice and over the course of the 10 weeks work both independently and in tandem with their colleagues to come up with a creative solution, a novel and a useful solution to that communication challenge. And over the years, you can see on our website, but I'll share a couple here, we have had very inventive projects that have come out of that particular final assignment. Students have done everything from design an immersive story app looking at the history of hip hop and jazz in the Central District here in Seattle. People have looked at redefining the way communication takes place in pharmacies by actually redesigning the way that pharmacies look and operate within places like Bartell's or Walgreens or Rite Aid. And we had a student last year who looked at issues of overconsumption and how we communicate, how entities communicate with us around purchase decisions, creating something called Cart IQ, which is a widget that you install on your computer that asks you to have a level of mindfulness around the way that you purchase things online. So really looking at e-commerce and the intersection of human behavior and technology. So these are just a couple examples of projects that have come out of my class. And again, I really encourage you to spend time on the website, specifically in the curriculum, as a bit of a clue as to which degree may resonate most for you, keeping in mind that every student is given the opportunity to take up to 2 classes in the alternative track. So you'll hear a little bit more about this from my colleague Akin Yashin, who's going to talk not only about her core class, which complements mine in the spring, but a little bit more about the curriculum and the faculty that we present to all of you as part of the Comm Lead experience. So please, Akin.
Thank you, Anita. Richard, can you hear me? Okay, so thank you all for taking time to come here in this beautiful fall day. If anyone is out of town or have friends out of town, tell them that the weather is never like this, right? So we've been having surprisingly blue skies and it's been wonderful. So thank you again for joining us today. We're very excited to have you with us. I am an associate director of the program in conjunction with Anita and Hansen. We try to think about the next generation of classes and experiences for you. I also teach one of the required courses in the program that's offered usually in the springs. Building off of Anita's class, it's also an experience where the cohorts or the people that you start the program with takes the class together so that there's a sense of community within our program so that you're not just around taking classes and separated from each other. Instead, you're building a network of people in the program. In my program, in my class in the spring, I build off of what Anita teaches our lovely students. In the first class, students create a project of their own. In my class, we take it to a different level. We again work with communication challenges, and we particularly focus on the organizational level of communication, particularly organizational communication and storytelling. We look at a wide array of global and national and local organizations and look at how they communicate who they are, both to internal and external stakeholders. Whilst doing that, we have class clients in the class that allows us to apply what we're thinking. So for the past 2 years, we worked with a variety of for-profit and nonprofit entities influential in our local areas. So students get to actually build their portfolio in this common experience by doing teamwork. In the past couple years, just to give you an idea, last year we worked with Food Lifeline, one of the providers of the food banks in the area, particularly with their challenges of how to present their organization's identity to a variety of volunteers and also people who donate to the organization. We also worked with Boys and Girls Club of King County last year. They were trying to build a program to better communicate who they are to their volunteers so that other volunteers could recruit others and had more of an identity, shared organizational identity amongst the volunteers. We also had clients such as Filson and We Communications, which are for-profit entities that had a variety of challenges of communicating either who they are to their employees, or in the case of Filson, it was a challenge of reaching out to millennials, something a lot of organizations are thinking about actively. So our students actually offered projects, and there's a competition environment as well. Usually the organization invites back a team to the space to give a presentation, and organizational members come to the class to hear also different pitches from our student groups. So it's a really lively and fun experience where you get to work with each other and also actually affect change and spark change in a variety of different institutional contexts. I also want to tell you a little bit about our faculty. Our faculty is a testament to the variety of classes that we offer. Usually we have a variety of different faculty with focus, but 3 core types of faculty we have is we have pioneers in education and research who are faculty members at UW who do a number of different research projects about organizational communication, technology, communication around technology and digital media. So they are with PhDs, and there are actually faculty members at UW that offer a variety of different classes for our students. We also have a number of faculty who are high-level thinkers, consultants, influencers in their areas. Usually these faculty members have their own companies and work with a number of different stakeholders and also publish work. A third group of our faculty are those who are active in a variety of professional matters, from marketing to user experience to content strategy to public relations to crisis communication. And some of our faculty who are active in professional fields actually see our program not just as a chance to teach classes, which they really enjoy and they update it every year and we have a great time rethinking our curriculum, but also they see it as a chance to recruit their next level high thinkers in their organizations. Currently we have faculty who are employed in Microsoft, Facebook, T-Mobile, Expedia, to name a few. And again, these faculty members have a particular orientation and thinking about their organizations and also hiring our students as they move forward with our program as well. I would like to tell you more about our relationships with a variety of different entities in our area, but we have it in a variety of different ways. Our faculty is one way in which we're connected to our local and national communities. Alex, who I'll turn it to, will tell us a little bit about our partnerships.
My name's Alex Stonehill. I'm Comm Lead's head of creative strategy, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about those beyond the classroom opportunities, along with my colleague Molly Schachter, who's will be joining me up here in a second. Before I dive into that, I want to give a quick shout out to our team that's live streaming the event. So Richard McLean, who's back there with the headset on, works at a company called Varvid that does live streaming of events, and he's bringing his expertise in. He's a cohort 18 student and working with volunteers, Roger Codillo from cohort 18 and Chantal Liu from cohort 17. So this is a really good example of how we look for any opportunity to apply Comm Lead learning and learn from each other as well. So we can see a student who has an existing skill set coming in and teaching some other students, and everybody's kind of building their learning. Every opportunity we have to do that, we try to take it. So excited and grateful to them for helping us with this today. So yeah, really one of Comm Lead's core philosophies is that superlative curriculum and faculty that you heard about is elevated by the opportunity to do hands-on work out in the world, out in the real world. And so, as you heard, we like to bring in industry professionals as guest speakers into classes. We bring in organizations and local businesses as class clients, like Akin was talking about. And another way we do that is through this growing initiative that is creatively called the Partner Program, where we partner with organizations and set students up to work mostly with nonprofit organizations to work on communication challenges that they're facing. So again, you're going to hear that phrase communication challenge a lot because that's what Comm Lead is all about, confronting those communication challenges. So these projects can be mission-driven videos, they can be messaging strategies, audience research, outreach plans, almost anything that students are learning in classes. Through the Partner Program, we're taking those skills and trying to apply them working with local organizations. So some examples. Last year, we had a focus for these Partner Program projects on ocean health and sustainability. So we partnered with a lot of marine science organizations and environmental organizations. And one of those projects was a student named Aaron Good and a student here named Yao Wu, who were tasked with working with a sustainable seafood startup called Future of Fish that wanted a video about this fishing collective in Belize that was sort of doing sustainable seafood right and serving both the fishermen very well and the consumers here in the United States really well. So they had the opportunity to go down to Belize and actually shoot this video over the course of a week. Not all of these Partner Program projects take you to fantastic tropical destinations like that. Let's be real, but they do give you the opportunity to cement what you learn in class by working with real-world clients. And we look at that as a way that our program can give back to the community. Again, mostly these are nonprofits. This year we're focusing on housing affordability and homelessness, and most of our projects are centered around that, which, as you probably know, is a huge issue here in Seattle. And for you, it's a way to build your portfolio and your professional connections as you, and your professional networks as you look to launch your next career or your career move. So that's probably a good segue into Molly. You can come up, and again, you can probably just.
I do. I won't drop it though. Is this good? I'm assuming this is good. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Molly Schachter. I'm the head of partnerships here with Comm Lead. I'm also a student in the program as well, in the MCCN track. So when we break later, you can ask me about either things. I switch hats between the two roles often, so comfortable talking about both. And definitely biased towards the MCCN degree. I'm not gonna lie about that. So I work with Alex closely on the partner program, but I also wanted to talk about the other ways that we make the beyond the classroom experience really stellar. I think obviously the curriculum and the faculty are really strong, but I would argue that the beyond the classroom experiences are equally important and of value in this program. So some of the ways that we do that have already been mentioned. So the class clients, obviously the second core class that Akin teaches, you'll work with clients in that, but a number of our other classes work with clients, and sometimes you get to choose the client that you work with. So we've had a number of students who are working full-time will actually work on their class deliverable for their actual organization that they work for. Others will use it as an opportunity to take advantage of emailing somebody and saying, hey, I'm a graduate student, I really want to do a project for you. This happened, a student did that with somebody at KUOW. It allowed her to build a connection and kind of went on from there. So a number of classes will do that. You can always email the faculty ahead of time and ask for the syllabus and see if that's a class, if you kind of want to prioritize that. It's especially good if you're working full time and you won't be able to take advantage of the partner program opportunities, or maybe you just don't have the capacity between life and everything to do kind of the extra stuff outside of classes. We try and make those opportunities available within the classroom as well. And then of course the guest speakers, we've already mentioned that too, but in addition to the kind of the tech sector, I know those have been mentioned, we also really emphasize government, nonprofit. We really try and get a lot of cross-industry representation in a lot of our different classes, so you're getting that exposure to whatever strategy you're learning, how it's played out in the nonprofit, tech sector, startup, etc. And then one of my favorite things that we do is called First Fridays. Can anyone guess when they happen each month? On the first Friday of the month. So these are our monthly networking events, and we hold them, like I said, once a month on the first Friday. And a different organization will host our community in their space. And it's a way for you to learn about a local business or organization, build your own connections, and then also build community amongst yourselves, other cohorts, and alumni. So this year so far, we were at Edelman last month, which is a communications agency here in the area. They're a global agency all over the world. That was in, October, and then last month we were with 3 nonprofits in the area that all are housed together under the Northwest Film Forum in Capitol Hill. And then coming up later in the year, we'll be over at Microsoft. We're doing one with We Communications, so we really kind of try and get out there, and again, that cross-sector, getting you exposed to different types of organizations. And then in addition to that, sometimes we'll partner with different companies to host workshops. We've done this with Facebook for the past couple of years. Content strategy was mentioned earlier as kind of an emphasis that some folks like to go into. So the past couple of years, we've partnered with them, gone into their organization, and their content strategists will show you behind the scenes how they do content strategy specifically at Facebook. So kind of gives you that. What's that? Oh, not a slide. Thank you. Forgot about that. So these are some of the places where our alumni work. We've mentioned some of them before. Again, this is just a snapshot. You can see, again, there's, the big companies, Amazon, Adobe, Microsoft, but then some smaller nonprofits like the Seattle Globalist, Washington STEM, Washington Environmental Council, et cetera. And some of our alums who are here tonight, who you'll hear from, work at some of these organizations. And then the last thing that I want to just speak about is career. This is a professional program, so we would assume that most of you are coming back because you want to accelerate or pivot in your career in some way. So we have a lot of hands-on intentionality around that. We have a career coach who hosts regular workshops throughout the year and also offers one-on-one sessions with you. Every week we send out a list of curated jobs and internships and project-based works that are exclusively for comm leaders. And this list is really valuable in part because every opportunity that we send out, we have a direct connection with. So you won't just be applying blindly, we can actually connect you directly with somebody who works at the organization. And then, of course, something you'll hear about in a little bit is our alumni network. I think it was mentioned earlier that, yes, we have these strong partnerships, but really it's the community that you join when you join Comm Lead that is this incredibly valuable thing. Once you become a student and you graduate, you're still part of that community for life. We're never going to let you leave. And I think that's all I have to say. By this point, hopefully you are just dying to apply. So my colleague Heather is going to tell you how to do that. Do you want to use this? Or are you going to use this?
I'll use my hand.
Okay.
All right, transitions. Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Werkel. So if you've emailed about the program at all, you've gotten an email from me back. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Services, and what that means is I help students all the way from applying to the program, investigating the program, which you all are now, through graduation. And so all the degree requirements, supporting you as a student while you're in the program, connecting you to services. So I am the student affairs person, if you're familiar with that role. And I wanted to talk today about, now that you're excited about the program, how do you get in? How do you become one of us? So brand new this year, we actually have 2 application deadlines. So our priority deadline is February 1st, and this has always been our application deadline, so that's staying the same. And all international students need to apply by the priority deadline because of the time it takes to process a visa and I-20 when you're coming in as an international student. And all of you here today, since you're planning early and are already investigating the program, should be applying by February 1st. So we do have a final deadline of April 1st, but that is, we'll have limited spots available. So to be guaranteed consideration, you need to apply by the priority deadline. So we might have a handful of spaces left on that one. So you don't want to be competing against people at that tiny level of maybe there's 5, 10 spots open. So apply by February 1st. And then as far as requirements to get into the program, which is a question I get a lot, what are the minimum requirements? What does it matter what my major was? It doesn't, you could have majored in underwater basket weaving. Everyone uses it. Does any school actually have that as a major? Not underwater, okay. Textiles, I know, is a major, because we did have a student come through the program who was a textile major. No GRE, this is the big thing. We don't require GRE, GMAT. You don't need to worry about taking that if this is the only program you're applying to. Saves a barrier for you, saves just some money, and the numbers really don't tell us what we need to know about you anyway. There's a minimum of 4-year baccalaureate degree, and for that, some people ask about, which does my degree count? If it's a 3-year from a certain country, I would say the graduate school is the best place to go to get the for sure answer for that, because they are the gatekeepers for whether your degree meets their eligibility requirements. If you got a U.S. bachelor's degree, you're good. And then at least a 3.0 or B GPA for your most recent 2 years. So this is another great advantage of the way UW does their graduate admissions. We don't care what you did freshman, sophomore year. That 8 a.m. physics class that you didn't want to be in anyway, then didn't do too well in your freshman year, doesn't matter. We don't even look at it. So your GPA for admission is based on the most recent 2 years, or 90 quarter credits, or 60 semester credits, so not your cumulative GPA. And then you have to meet the English language proficiency requirement, and there's several ways that you can do that, and we have a link to all those methods on our website as well. So once you meet those requirements, when you're submitting the actual application, we have on our website this checklist of all the elements. So you have your unofficial transcripts, recommendations, resume, and then a personal statement. 500 words or fewer, we take that seriously. We will stop reading it if you write too much, and then it won't make a lot of sense if we stop halfway through. So really stick to that. And then the video is a unique application element for our program. So it's 90 seconds or fewer. And in that, we ask you to tell us a story from your life that led you to apply to this degree. So it's a way for us to get to know you off paper, as a person, as a holistic human being who's applying to this program. Your resume tells us where you've worked. Your transcripts tell us what, schools you've gone to and grades and classes. But the video really gets us to get to know you, as a person. And so that has really improved our cohorts. I think my colleagues would agree over the last few years since we implemented the video, our students have gotten even more amazing in how we've selected them. So that we really look at that video. And then again, for non-native English speakers, there's evidence of proficiency in English, and there's several ways to meet that requirement. Yes, and on the video, it's a good reminder, we're not looking for production value. Think of it like one question of a Skype interview. So it's one shot, no editing, no graphics, and we just want to be able to hear and see you. And that replaces an interview since we don't have time to interview everybody who applies. And finally, I'm talking about the timeline. So you're planning now. This is awesome. Don't submit your application tomorrow. Once you submit your application, it's locked. You can't change anything in it. So we recommend waiting until early January to submit the application so that you can tweak that personal statement and the video. You can add anything if you get a new job, update your resume. So we do recommend waiting until January to submit the application so that it's all up to date, because once you submit it, you can't change it. And then also in early January is when you should designate your recommenders, because you put their name and email address in there, and then they have to submit an online recommendation. So if you wait until the deadline to do that, they get the email that day that says this is due today, and they freak out and email me. So, and they don't get it in on time. So as soon as you decide who's going to be recommending you, it's a good time to go ahead and designate them. Submit your applications by February 1st, and then we will let you know by late March whether you've been admitted to the program, denied from the program, or on our wait list if we have too many wonderful people and we don't have space for all of you. And then you have to let us know by April 15th whether you accept if we admit you to the program. So that's kind of what the timeline looks like. You get to register for classes in late June if you're in the program. So with that, I know you'll have questions about this, and we will have time at the end for Q&A about all these logistics and about the program. But now I'll pass it over to Jill and some of our students and alumni so they can share their inside perspectives on the program.
I'm gonna give, so if you guys want to come up, you guys can, yeah, I'll take that and then they can pass this around. Well, it might be nice to stand, because then you can see everybody's bright shining faces. Thanks, as we transition each time. Oh.
You're doing it right.
What do I do? Oh, there. All right, this is my first lapel mic, everybody.
Make it through Comm Lead.
I know. All right. Cool. Okay. And then actually, you guys could have sat down because I put all of your beautiful faces on here. So hi, everybody. My name is Jill Medeiros. I'm actually an alum of the program, and I'm currently working with the program, helping with recruitment and getting the new faces of Comm Lead. So we've talked a lot about the program. And one thing we want to dive into, though, is the student experience. And that's one of the things that I'll say, in addition to the faculty and just meeting the staff and faculty, is the connections I made with my colleagues that have been really impactful. And everybody has different backgrounds and goes into different things. And it is a community that stays, like Molly says. It's something that continues on well past you graduate. So I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. If you could share your name, your cohort, what concentration you had, and the cohort that they mentioned, that's the year essentially that they came into the program, your company, and why you decided to join Comm Lead.
Hello, everybody. And my name is William, and I am cohort 17, and I'm doing MCDM program. And I am currently a project management intern at a company called Agora. They're based in Silicon Valley. They're doing like video chat, SDK. Sorry, it means like software development kits. And on the side project, I'm also doing a startups, which is doing a disaster relief program for people in need. So yeah.
Thank you. My name is Alena Kaiser. I'm cohort 16. I'm an alumni of the program. And I work for DFS Lab. I'm a communications consultant. Technically, I work for Caribou Digital, but DFS Lab is a subset of that. So I work across a few different projects in emerging market digital development, basically, managing their communications. And why? Thank you. The most important question, why? Because this was when I was looking for a grad program, this one really stuck out for me as a very value-aligned program. This storytelling for change, right? It's like the dream. So that's what brought me here, and it proved to be everything I wanted it to be.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cavalry. I'm from cohort 17, MCCN track. So I'm currently interning at this company called SAP. Not sure how many know, but it's like a marketplace for B2B companies. So I'm doing the customer marketing for them. Why I joined Comm Lead is because I am from India, and back in India, I worked as an internal communication specialist for over 7 years, and I did not have any exposure to external marketing. And when I was evaluating programs, I did not come across any other program than Comm Lead that offers end-to-end of both internal and external communications.
Cassandra Schwartz. I was cohort, it says here, 15. I always forget. It's like a trick question. MCCN, so yay, Molly. I currently work for a company called Zenova. It is a startup that matches internal R&D programs with innovators across different fields. And I run product marketing. So my job is to really understand who our customers are. And in our case, because we are a market network, we have a slew of customers from companies to end users. And so I really need to understand them and speak to them in a multitude of ways. And the why. So actually, Hanson, you mentioned that when you get applications, you're really excited to see this is the program that they'd never thought about grad school until this, or this is the only program they applied to. And I was the latter. I had been looking at grad school programs across the US, and the reason this one stood out to me was that it was a curriculum that is always changing. And when I looked at other programs, that was not the case. Some of the communications programs had been the same for the last 30 years. And while the foundation of what we do certainly has not changed, the way we apply it in very different ways has. I was reading something today that was a research done in 2009 that a colleague was like, oh, this might be relevant to what you're working on. It was talking about CEOs who are like, yes, sometimes I use the computer to look things up. So a program that doesn't change isn't super helpful for me to really understand how to engage people, and that's where this program really stood out to me.
Cool. A good segue from that is, so there are so many different courses that you can take, and sometimes it can be challenging to figure out which ones you want to take. Of the classes that you've taken so far and during your experience, what have been the most impactful for you? And this is for everybody, and why?
For me, it's definitely like my favorite class in the program is called like the Future of Marketing, and it's definitely changed my mind because the reason something I didn't answer was the reason why I applied to this program is because I went straight from undergraduate degree at UW to the graduate degree still at UW. And I only applied to this program because I'm really passionate about technologies, but I'm not, honestly, I learned coding before, but I'm not really like software designer or software developers, and but I have this passions to the technology, so I wonder how can I fit myself into this industry. So, and then I took the Future of Marketing class, which really introduced the most popular technologies nowadays, and then try to imagine how to use those technologies for marketing in the future. And at the end of the class, you are required to create a project for a hypothetical clients. And for us, we select a telemedicine company. For those of you who are not familiar with telemedicine, it's essentially like doing drug tests in space, because the drug test will speed up in zero gravity. And my job is to figure out how to use artificial intelligence and blockchain to improve the qualities of drug tests in space so that they can improve their brand identities and the marketings. So that's my favorite class, like, no doubt.
I have two that I would kind of highlight today. One is a KINS identity, organizational identity class. That one I find myself continuously going back to in my everyday work. So like I said before, I work across a few different projects, and they're all kind of newer initiatives within this company that's been around for a little while. And all of them are kind of struggling with who are they and how do you communicate that to our target audience. And so I find myself going back to that organizational identity course and thinking through this with my clients. So that's been awesome. And then also, same as William, the Future of Marketing class was an awesome one. I did not work in telemedicine on my project, but found it to be a really valuable class to think about, like, where is the industry going? And part of my role in my job is content marketing, and looking at how you can kind of overlay data and these different functions that are kind of coming up in these newer technologies, and how to apply that to my work right now has been just invaluable.
For me, it was the digital marketing and branding class by Marr. So I was initially a little skeptical if I should really take that class, because I already had an MBA in marketing, but that was like ages ago. Like Cassandra said, it keeps changing. So I was really skeptical, but then I went for it, and whatever I've learned there, the best thing about that class was we got to pick a client that we wanted to work with. We did the entire marketing plan for them. So the concepts that was towards know your target audience, divide your target audience, reach out to them differently. So those aspects was something that I thought was very vital when it comes to marketing. So whatever I've learned from that class, I've literally printed them and I've put it on my desk, and I keep referring them back to them again and again. And I've also used all of those concepts in all of my partner program projects. So I think that was one of the most beneficial classes for me.
I don't have one. I really struggled. Jill was nice enough to share ahead of time what the question was going to be, and I can't come up with an answer. I loved every class for very different reasons, and I took a very strategic approach to the program, and trying to understand how each one could help me look at my career differently and what I do. So I will pick out a couple just because I feel like I have to. One of my favorites was Phillipson, Jerry Phillipson, who now teaches somewhat in a different way, I understand. But he used to have a class on leadership and teams, and thinking about how communities and teams work together and how different things lead to the success or failure of a group was incredibly impactful for me. It allowed me to walk into my work the next day and be like, now I know why this.
Oh no. Yeah.
That wasn't you.
Do you want me to?
Just wait for 1 second.
Okay.
Can you hear this? Cool. Hold it right there. Yeah, 2 hands. Let's 2-hand it.
Now I feel really, okay, Great.
You were saying.
Yes, awkward moment aside, can't let go of it. So other than Phillipson's class, I also really enjoyed, Akin teaches a class, Communicating Ideas, and really makes you think about how do ideas spread. And it's incredibly impactful whether you work in like the communications that are maybe somewhat softer or a digital way. And so that you can understand what makes an idea really excel and what makes it stop. And it's usually not the idea itself. So I really enjoyed that class, and that class actually still exists. So.
Cool. This next question is for Alina. What opportunities have you been able to take advantage of outside of the classroom?
Okay. 1 minute. Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to fix it. Just hold it.
Yeah, so the opportunities that I've had to take kind of these out of the classroom opportunities. One thing that surprised me the most about Comm Lead, I would say, is how many opportunities there are to work outside of the classroom that complement what you're doing in class so well, and that they're paid. That was a really great addition. So I had 3 opportunities. The first, and they all kind of bled into each other, right? So the first was working as a consultant just for a 1-day brainstorming session with this environmental impact, this environmental impact think tank. And they were going through a rebranding identity, and we're working with Vulcan to kind of lead that brand identity. And Vulcan reached out to Comm Lead and was seeking a student to come kind of help consult through that. And I was lucky enough to be chosen for that. And what was really cool in that specific scenario was to see what I was learning in class completely mirrored with what the brand strategists at Vulcan were doing. So that was really cool. The next that I had an opportunity to be involved in was working with the Nearest program in Comm Lead. And so that was the ocean storytelling piece that Alex was talking about earlier, that to do a bit of research and kind of landscaping to find out who in the Seattle area was doing this kind of work with ocean health and human communities, what they were trying to solve, what we could kind of partner with them to solve, and how we could kind of build this program out. And so that was amazing. I mean, you have so many opportunities to dive into different areas. That was like partnership building, but then also through that same program, I got to work on a video, which is something I hadn't ever done before. And then the last piece was an internship with DFS Lab, who I still work for, and then was brought on into a full-time capacity for their parent company. So yeah, all 3 of those, I would say, kind of formed this like bridge experience for me in Comm Lead, where it allowed me to move from my background in environmental communications and public relations, and start moving into that like branding and strategic communications, and now into the digital development world where I am now. I hope that made sense.
Thank you. Next question, well, it's going to go over to William, but before I do, I'm curious, quick show of hands, how many of you guys are current undergrads? Cool. Wonderful. So for you guys, so you have the unique perspective of, 1, being a UW undergrad going into a UW grad program, but 2, going directly into a grad program after your undergrad. So what sort of factors led you to decide to immediately go into a grad program as opposed to working for a few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually, just a little bit background, I actually still study communications at UW for the undergrads. And when I graduated, I, just like a lot of other students, I did not know what I was gonna do. There were just like so many options, and I know like technology field is something that I'm really passionate about, but it's just very vague. Like under technology, there's so many different options, but I didn't know. And then I talked to the advisor at the comm department, and then they recommend this program. When I look onto their website, I actually did a little like stalking-ish, like LinkedIn stalking. Like I did a little research on every single professors and their backgrounds. I just very surprised like how much like variety of the different professional backgrounds are there. There was like a UX researcher, there's UX designers, there is a consultant for policymakers, there's a data scientist who can teach you like the Pythons. It's just like for people, it's perfect for people who are interested in like so many different fields but cannot make any decisions because it provides like so many different classes for you to have a taste on each single things. And then after you learn about it, you can finally make your own decision. So yeah, that's how I go through it.
Perfect, thanks.
Yep.
I'm just being mindful of time. All right, so next question is going to go over to Cavalry. So you came to Seattle a few years ago, and with over 7 years of communications experience previously in India, like you mentioned, can you share how you're using the Comm Lead degree in your future career aspirations?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my experience was all in internal communications. I would do around 2% or 3% of external communications. That was because I was handling corporate social responsibility as well for my organizations. But I always wanted to learn the other side of marketing, so which is why I got into this program in the first place. But I always thought, is this something that I can really do? Because the first thing that organizations ask for is, what kind of experience do you have in external marketing? So what helped me in this program was all the real clients that we worked with. So all of those counted as external communication experience, because you are giving them social media strategy. You're telling them, this is your communication challenge. This is how you're going to work towards it. These are the strategies you can work on. These are the tactics you need to use. So that is how I landed in an external communication role at SAP, where I'm working right now. So even in the future, I would want to have a blend of internal and external communication, not entirely just one side of communication, and that's where I'm going to apply all my learnings.
Yeah. Cassandra, so you've become an influencer in the marketing space, speaking at conferences. You've created an impact at Rival IQ and now Zenova. And you even created a publication with fellow Comm Lead alum, Jillian Reddish. She has Drive. So I'd love if you could just share a little bit more about your career path, where Comm Lead fit into all of that, and what ignited your entrepreneurial project with Jillian.
Yeah, so there's a couple different questions in there.
There's a million questions.
So let me first talk about She Has Drive, which, as you said, I partnered with Jillian Reddish, who I met through the program, actually took Phillipson's class, and her and I sat next to each other, and that's how that relationship started. And for us, one of the things about being in a program like this is that you'll have a lot of conversations about some of the problems that you're seeing that relate to communications. And so one of the things that we had following the 2016 election was a lot of conversations about what the F just happened? What did we just witness? And what was missing? And so the conversations that we had particularly centered around the lack of connection between people. There was very much it's the them over there and not an us. And particularly we looked at the stories around women's issues. And so much of the conversations of, well, that's not like, my girlfriend never experienced that. My friends never had that. Actually, she probably has. And so Jillian and I had a conversation, and many other women, not just in the Comm Lead program, and that's what started She Has Drive. It really sparked this idea of how can we help women share their stories in a unique way that gives them a voice. And so we ended up having women around the globe submitting articles for that. We did it for a year. To really look at how can we communicate in different ways, and how can we give an opportunity for people that have never had a voice. These were not people that have ever been published before. They were women who simply were like, yes, I want to share my experience. I think that somebody else might identify with it. So that's how that came about. Like I said, we did it for a year. It was one of those things that both Jill and I looked at it as, this is really important, and we think that there's an opportunity here. And some learnings from it, but not that either one of us wanted to go do that full time. We didn't see ourselves as future media moguls. And so we did that project and then have been able to share our experience. We helped women tell their stories in different ways and helped people who had never written before to really break down how do you go about sharing your story, and then we're able to use that to answer other people's questions. So it's not a week that goes by where I don't get an email from somebody who's like, well, how did you do that? Can you share how that happened? And we're able to break that down of here are some steps you can take if you want to do something similar. Because certainly if you take one of Akin's classes, she'll talk about how ideas spread, part of that idea spreading, and I think it's in the new Power book as well, is you have to let it go. And that was something that was really important to Jill and I. She Has Drive was something we could do, but it wasn't just for us. And then you also asked about career.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned earlier, I was very intentional in the program. I looked at each class of how would this fit in where I want to go and how am I going to utilize this. There's certainly the aspect of if you're not sure what you want to do, doing a little bit of a tasting approach to it works well. But in my sense, I came already having a pretty strong foundation in my career. And so I was looking for a way to really accelerate that and utilize things in a different and unique way. And so I reached out to every single professor that I was considering taking their classes and asked for their syllabus. And I used that as well as then I'd follow up with more questions for them to determine if that class made sense for what I needed and what I was looking for. I was able to really strategically decide the classes I was choosing and the projects that would then flow into that to decide if that was going to align with my future. I actually, one of the things that I did is I did one project that then I did it in different iterations throughout the program that led to the speaking engagement I had recently at Seattle Interactive, which was a culmination of the 3 years I was studying around B2B storytelling. And so I was able to give a very in-depth 40-minute presentation on all the things I was able to understand and learn from the program. And actually, Akin and I were just recently talking about, okay, now how do I reiterate on that and improve that presentation for future opportunities? So.
Cool. We have 2.5 minutes left. The first one's going to be a quickie, and then I'm going to give you an option of 2 questions. So the next one is just how long, because it was one of the things that I was curious about as I was looking into the program, was how long did the program take each, or will take each of you to complete? So you can.
3 years.
Actually, I could finish in a year, but then I took summer break, so 1 year, 3 months. Yeah, 15 months.
I finished in a year and a half.
Mine's me too. Like I finished that a year and a half.
Cool. Okay, so for our last question, 1 minute and 47 seconds, you can choose between, oh God, I'm cracking under pressure. Was there anything that surprised you about Comm Lead once you started the program, anything unexpected, or any closing thoughts or words of wisdom as everybody here is deciding what their next step should be? So unexpected about Comm Lead or words of wisdom?
What I'm excited about Comm Lead, do I start?
Oh no, yeah,
okay.
go.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
What I was surprised about Comm Lead is like everyone knows each other. It's a great community. And the word of wisdom is go reach out to the Comm Lead alumni, and everyone is so willing to help like the people in the community. So when you join the program, it's not just program, it's a community. So yeah.
Yeah, I would echo that. The thing that surprised me the most is the community that you're in after you're in this program. You feel it when you join, and as an alum, you feel it even still. So,
Words of wisdom. Don't waste your time looking at other programs or other universities. If you really like this session, just go for this program. It's an awesome one. It has changed my life. It could change yours too.
I feel like that's a mic drop moment.
Perfect. Do you have anything? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you guys for sharing your experiences. And well, you could stay standing because now we're going to transition into your opportunity to speak. So any questions that you have for anybody that you've heard from today about application, about student experience? Am I moderating this part? Yes, yes.
I was just wondering if any of the alumni were working a full-time job when they were completing the program, and if so, they could speak to maybe again something that surprised them, or what was the biggest challenge of taking the program while they were also doing a full-time job, those kind of things.
Okay. Yes, that's why it took me so long. So I took one class a quarter and I took summers off. When I originally started the program, I was not intending to take summers off, but I sat next to a wonderful student who was a couple years ahead of me in the program, and he leaned over one day in Phillipson's class and was like, "Take the summers off." And I did, and I loved it because it made me incredibly joyful every September to come back to the program and be re-energized. And of course, if you live in Seattle, you know how wonderful our summers are. So to be able to spend that time outdoors and engaging in things, and still I had a job. So I didn't have the vacations that other people maybe would typically have. And because of that, it made me very intentional about the program. It was mentioned several times about it's a community. And so because I was working full-time and taking classes, it meant that I really had to be proactive to go out and engage in other things that was going on in the community. And it was worth the effort. I made it very clear to my friends and family that, hey, I'm in grad school. I'm paying a lot for this, and so I want to get a lot out of it. So I'm sorry if I'm not going to go out every Friday night like maybe I used to. I also have a unique situation where I also have a child. So that made it even extra level of intensity of planning. But I brought him along to different things. We had an orientation, was that in September? September. And I brought him along. I'm like, sure, okay, you're coming along with me, because he has gotten to experience the Comm Lead and graduate program in a very different way, in the hopes that my hope and intention was that, like, hey, let me open this so you see what I'm working on. And while I'm sitting down doing my homework with you, this is why. So.
Thanks, Cassandra. We're actually hoping her son will apply in about 10 years. Just wanted to mention that for the first 5 questions, just as an incentive, we're handing out copies of my seriously outdated book, Storyteller Always. In fact, it's so outdated that we don't even make our students read it anymore, but I'm happy to sign them. However, it is required reading at University of California, Santa Cruz, and I'm heading there next week to give a guest lecture, and I'm kind of embarrassed about the whole thing, but I'll be giving an updated lecture. But it's a nice little memento for you guys to have, and it actually does speak to the ethos of why storytelling and why in our program. I guess I got the mic. Damn. Next question. Yes. How are we doing? Yeah. Okay.
So the main question when I ask my employers, like, hey, can you recommend or can you submit a recommendation for me? The main question that they ask is, what is it that I need to include in that recommendation?
Is this on? Yeah, perfect. So think about your application as a full package, right? So if it's a professional person or if it's your professional contact, you want them to give us a sense of the work that you've done, what you've contributed in that environment, how you perhaps interact with others in the workplace. So maybe give us a sense of your professional personality, because you'll be speaking to the rest of it in the other materials in your application. Does that make sense? Perfect.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm afraid it's going to sound really negative, so I hope it doesn't come off that way. But as someone working full time, what are the things that you're learning through this program that you're not learning on the job?
I can answer that in a very big way. Does anybody want to answer that very specific? Is that yeah, actually, that would be helpful if one of our students or alumni want to answer that.
I'll just chime in. So as someone who, did you ask the question? Yeah. Hi. So as someone who works for the program, I thought long and hard about this because I kind of like through osmosis, because I worked for the program before I was a student. So I was like, what am I gonna, right, because I'm like already in it, so I feel like it's like to the nth degree. And I would say the biggest reason to do it is you're giving yourself permission to pause and explore intellectually. So you're gonna get to work on things that a lot of times are your choice, and you're going to get to open your mind in a way that you don't always get to do in a job because there's deadlines, there's, you know, just requirements that are part of it. So I think a lot of it is it'll help you to kind of think about things from a different perspective, take something that maybe you thought you knew how to do, but then think about it from a different audience's perspective or a different kind of industry perspective. But I would say the biggest thing, more so than the skills, is just giving yourself permission to pause and think, like, intellectually, what do I really want to do? And just as an anecdote, this past weekend I was with a group of my girlfriends. We're all about the same age. We're all in our 30s. And I found them really frustrated with where they're at in their careers because they weren't kind of feeling intellectually challenged or stimulated. And I found myself starting to talk about some of the classes, and they all were kind of like, and this is just an anecdotal story, but they all were like, wow, like, that's grad school. And so I think, don't think of it maybe so much as skill-based, think of it more as a holistic grad school experience.
And because of the permission that Molly just mentioned to explore, no matter how high-tech a workplace is, most workplaces are highly conservative when it comes to taking risks and thinking about what's coming next. And so when I engage with a lot of leaders in this region, one of the reasons they come to me is that they want to see the forest from the trees. They don't have the freedom to see everything and connect the dots the way we do. So when you're in one of our classes, you get a chance to connect the dots. And our students often, you heard from some of our alums and our students saying when they go back to work the next day, they're able to take some of the things they learned in class because we're that far on the cutting edge, and we are connecting the dots that way. And we expect our students to go out and advocate for a different way of doing things.
It's out here, and then
I'm going to let Alex choose.
Okay, I'm trying to go with the order that I said.
Oh, and next, after this one, we'll take a question from online.
So this question is particularly about the video that we have to give along with our application. So what I want to ask is how different would a video will be from the application? What do you expect in the video? Will it be a summary of the application or something else?
Thanks for that question. Think of the video as a complement to the essay that you're going to write in your letter, your statement of purpose. Think of every aspect of your application as an opportunity for us to see you from a new angle, a new lens. And so what we don't want in a video is what we could read on your resume or what you have said in your essay. See each component of the application as an opportunity to tell something new, and the prompt for the video is specifically for you to tell us a personal anecdote. And so we really encourage folks to think creatively about what it is you'd like to share. It could be we had a student from the first class that were asked to do videos. She shot the video in her closet, looking at different articles of clothing and what they meant to her and where she'd been, and stories about how that time that she'd spent in Abu Dhabi had led her to think about her career and eventually apply to our program. So that's just one example. We've had students that have done their video with a parrot sitting on their shoulder, and we really mean it. No editing. Most people shoot it on their phone. It's not about production value. It's about what you share about yourself and how that ties into your ambition to come to the program. Is that helpful?
Oh. Okay, online question, then we'll go back. Here.
This is so tiny. So we have several questions, so I'll just take them in order. So the first one from Cindy is, what self-study can we do before the fall to help us be more successful in the program? And actually, I mean, I can answer this one. So we tell you exactly what to do for our admitted students. Once the cohort is finalized, we send you an email, usually in June, with a long list of here are the websites you should be acquainted with, here are magazines you should check out, here are some videos we want you to watch online. So we give you that full detailed list of here's everything you should be doing over the summer so you can hit the ground running in September. So I would say don't worry about that before you get in. Worry about getting into the program first, and then we will give you all of that in detail.
I had a question about like affordability, whether students use financial aid or most of them paying out of pocket. And then if you're already an undergrad here at UW in the communications department, can you still apply for scholarships and apply that to grad school?
Back to me. So first and most important, most of our students do use financial aid in the program, and so that's the same way as an undergrad, just by filling out the FAFSA eligible. At the grad level, unfortunately, it's primarily student loans. So graduate school doesn't have all of the grants and things that exist at the undergrad level. But you're definitely eligible for financial aid for either of these degrees. We also have the partner program has some opportunities where if you get a partner program project, there's a small stipend that goes with that, where it's a scholarship to help with your tuition in the program. We also have some students who have gotten scholarships through GOMAP, which is the Graduate Opportunity and Minority Achievement Program. Yes, all these acronyms in higher ed. So we have had 4 students now in the past couple of years get very, very large scholarships through GOMAP. And so that is specifically for underrepresented minority students who are going to grad school here at UW. And then we've had students find other, outside scholarships too. So we have a fees and financing page on the website that has most of these opportunities listed out to give you some ideas about how to fund the program. And the UW Libraries also has a graduate funding information service that is a really great resource for helping fund grad school. They do one-on-one sessions where they can look at your specific situation and which fellowships and scholarships you might be eligible for, and they can help you kind of plan that out. And fall is a good time to do that. A lot of those deadlines are actually well before our application deadline for next year. So I would say look into that page on the website, look into GFIS, the Graduate Funding Information Service now, because you often have to apply for financing for the program before you even find out if you've gotten into the program, just when the deadlines happen.
Since you have the mic, why don't you read another one for me?
Oh, all right, I will take another live stream question here. How integral are ethics, equity, and inclusion to the degree?
One of the things that makes our program unique is we're not just skill-based, we're value-based. So with your rest of your requirements, including the core classes, which have components of inclusion, diversity, ethics built into our discussions, we also have a law and ethics requirement that everyone in the program has to complete. So you have a variety of options for classes that includes a variety of discussions from law and ethics of community building to ethical issues around technology. In addition to that, like with all elements in our program, we have a variety of partnerships with on-campus and off-campus entities that allows us to make these ethical inclusion and accessibility discussions a backbone of our program. To give you a sense, one example is this year we partnered with Center for Communication Difference and Equity, which is a center located here at the Communication Department. They're offering a year-long series of workshops that are open to all our students, alumni, and networks, and they're talking about a variety of issues. The first workshop was about a variety of perspectives on privilege and understanding and breaking structures of privilege. And we're building a kind of a variety of discussions around our own personal experiences around these issues, but also building onto a space where we're going to bring these discussions to organizations that we partner with and our students work at. We believe that our students are the best representatives in bringing our values to the broader world that we're a part of.
And just speaking to that, because I mentioned that it's not just about how we operate and what we teach in the program, but because we are at this next inflection point in terms of technology, we're increasingly being called upon to make decisions around things like artificial intelligence. This is the front cover of Wired magazine for next month, which is not out yet, but it says less artificial, more intelligent. Let's rethink how it's made now. That's what we're supposed to do. In this program, our students and our alumni, we're the ones who need to champion the values that matter most to us in organizations and with technology. So for example, at the end of January, we're going to have a large event called Comm Lead Connects, and this year we'll be focused on artificial intelligence and what do we need to do from an ethics and inclusion and values point of view to be able to make the right decisions around these technologies and things that matter to us. So we're thinking about that as well and our place and how we advocate for that.
Persistence over here.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I have 2 questions. One, how many people are in a cohort versus how many people apply? It's my first one.
Okay. Sure. I'll start with that question and I'll pass it around. We accepted last year 86 students, and every year, so we had about, how many applications had there? 300 applicants, and they are, so we ended up accepting a little over Yeah, about 100 people, but a little bit over on my MCDM degree. And usually they have been, our MCCN degree has been becoming more popular, so we've been getting more and more applications for that degree as well. But about, I would say, 85 has been the number.
And then my second question, it sounds like a lot of this is super applicable to like nonprofits, and how much of that do you think, like from the classes, is, I work for Starbucks on our social impact team, so how much of it is like going to be applicable to like working for a brand versus working for a nonprofit?
The answer is quite applicable. I mean, one of the beauties, I think, of this degree is that we do take a cross-sector approach, and actually the legacy of this program is overwhelmingly private sector. If anything, what you're witnessing tonight is a very modern moment for us as a program where the nonprofit sector has become more robust in terms of the way that we think about our curriculum. But this is absolutely a program that was born very much out of the private sector. The MCDM is the degree that's been around for 18 years. And so when you look at our curriculum in terms of thinking about the digital team at Starbucks, which is actually, that's a company where we have a number of alums and current students, thinking about the way that we craft the classes that look at the branding that Cavalry mentioned with Brian Marr's class, or thinking more broadly about even the future of marketing class that Will mentioned. These are classes that would absolutely dovetail with the kind of questions that I think your company is asking itself about. How do you engage with your community? I had a wonderful conversation with a student today in my core class looking at corporate social responsibility. Starbucks came up because of the way that you engage with communities and that question around how subtly do you want to talk about your corporate social responsibility, how broadly do you want it to shout it from the rooftops. So I would assure you that you will find lots to intersect with when it comes to the way that companies have to think about communication. Thank you for asking. How would you want the chat? We've got tons of questions. Okay, let's take one from the top.
I really admire how embedded in the Seattle community this program seems. And I also understand that people who graduate work at national and international companies as well. But I'm wondering if you could talk about the scope of the network for those of us who live outside of Seattle and are interested in localized community-based work.
Yeah, I can certainly start, and then I'm happy to hand it off to others, because you've heard it said a number of times tonight, and I'll reiterate that I think one of the greatest distinguishing factors of this graduate program is our commitment to the community, and especially the community here in our backyard. It was a program that was very much born out of what we know is a regional powerhouse university with international acclaim. But this is let's face it, Seattle is a town that feels very deeply about its roots. And I say that as someone who is a transplant. I moved here 25 years ago from the Northeast, and so I still feel like I'm a student of this town, and yet I think that also gives you advantages because you absorb a place in a different way. And I think our program is emblematic of the kind of rich connection that Seattleites build with one another when it comes to opening doors, creating connections, developing those kinds of partnerships. And even though we're a relatively young program at the University of Washington, our network would speak to one that's 3, 4, 5 times our age, and with an alumni population that really punches just above its weight class when it comes to the kind of connections that we forge, knowing that we make a commitment to all of you. If you're going to entrust us with your hard-earned dollars, with your evenings from 6 to 10 p.m., these, after you've been either working hard along all day, or in my case, much of your Saturday, we want to make darn sure that coming out of this program, you have every political advantage, listen to me, I want you all to run for office. November 6th is over. With every professional advantage possible, and that starts here in this community. I mean, this is where our networks are richest and deepest, but as someone who also feels strongly about the reach that we have, if this is not where you want to hang your hat forever, I still feel that the advantage of coming to Seattle for this time period, and then we will help you find that job elsewhere, we make that commitment as well. Does that help answer your question?
Where do you live?
I live in Portland.
Which Portland? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's a joke. I live in Maine in the summers, so yeah. I assume you mean Oregon.
Yes, the closer, the unoriginal.
Well, a few things on Portland, and just generally speaking, I think I understand the gist of your question is like outside of the Seattle area, how do we resonate, how do we connect?
Right.
First of all, we've had students in the past commute from Portland
Yeah.
and from Los
That
Angeles
was
to
gonna
come
be
to
a
this program.
follow-up
And so we do, I mean, our network is very much, I mean, Seattle's just become such a huge global center that we have, our network is prominent here, but students who do come from other places, we make sure we connect you to alumni there, and we certainly have alumni in Portland and throughout Oregon. Also, you know, for example, I'm on the boards of the number of nonprofits that have reaches throughout the region, from KUOW to Climate Solutions, which actually has a strong connection to Portland. And so we do make sure that we do have those particular regional connections. And I think it comes through especially clearly in our partner program. For example, with the Ocean Link program we did last year, that was very much tied to local initiatives throughout the Pacific Northwest. And so we have our amazing ability to make connections in more localized ways because of that.
One of our faculty members comes up from Portland and teaches for us every year.
Carpool opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Oh, online. Is there an online question?
I'm gonna skip order a little bit because there's one directed at Cassandra. So while we have you here, so Cassandra, could you give us a specific example of how you use the program or a class strategically to fit with your career goals?
So actually, we have a professor that comes up from Oregon, and she teaches a class on storytelling, which sounds really fundamental for the program because that is the basis of all that we do. But that class specifically was about looking at what is a story that you want to tell and how can you craft that narrative in a very compelling and interesting way. So we spent the whole quarter crafting one story. So for me, I mentioned earlier that I did different pieces of a bigger project in every class. I took that class in my last 3 quarters. And I used that as an opportunity to really craft the story I was trying to tell with all of those things I was building up throughout the program. And specifically, I was telling a story around B2B storytelling. Somebody asked earlier about like utilizing this everything you learn in a brand way, not necessarily nonprofit. I work in B2B storytelling. I work in B2B marketing. I'm selling to enterprises and, like I mentioned earlier, also consumer on the user end. But for me, I wanted to really understand why do most brands, why do most companies not use storytelling when they're selling to other companies? And there are plenty of places where they talk about like, yes, B2B, we need to be doing storytelling, we need to take this to the next level, but not a lot of people were doing it. And so I spent a lot of my time looking at how can you craft that and how can you do it in a way that's going to still meet the needs of executives internally who have sales goals and intentional things they want you to do, but also really building in the people you're selling to. And so that was a core class that I took to really take everything I'd learned in the program, all the research I'd done about all the gaps that I'd seen along the way, and build that into a really compelling, interesting narrative that was the output of that class, and then the basis of how I then did my presentation at Seattle Interactive. And it was a big part of, as I was looking for my next role, I started looking a year ago when I knew, okay, I'm gonna graduate soon and I need to figure out what my next steps are. And so I started working through the network. And I had, from September to June, all of my interviews came through the network. I did not apply to a single job. I had multiple offers from companies like Microsoft and other larger companies in the area. And I ended up finding Zenova, which is, like I mentioned, a startup. And all of the conversations I'd had throughout that program and also through that year of having these interviews, I was able to ask very strategic questions of the company I was going into to be able to identify that they not only understood all of the research I'd done and wanted to utilize it and really craft stories, but also that they were going to go in a place that aligned with all of the things I had already done and I wanted to really leverage in this role. Did that answer that question?
It's me again. So our classes typically in evenings, what are like It sounds like people can work during the day and come to class at night, or is it a variety of classes? Yeah.
So I would say about 80% of our classes are during the week on the evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. This is great if you have currently a job, but many of our students who are direct from undergrad or finishing off their degrees end up getting a job, so it really helps them out that the classes are in the evenings. We also have some classes that meet on Saturdays intensively. So they usually, depending on their credit, if they're a 5-credit class, during the quarter they'll meet 5 Saturdays from 9 to 5. So it's every other Saturday they'll meet. If they're a 3-credit course, they'll meet 3 Saturdays through the quarter. So it's either on the weekends, on Saturdays, or during the week. One exception is during the summers, we'll also have intensive classes. We know that the summer here is fantastic. So we want to make sure that for those who are going to take the classes in the summer, we have some options where you can explore different class styles. So we have intensive classes that meet for a whole week, basically 9 to 5. Many of our full-time employed and also full-time students have taken advantage of that, partly to intensively explore a topic, partly to also enjoy the summer. So that would be the structure.
Okay.
Hi. As an international student, I know this program is very attractive because it is a STEM program. So I believe it fits in the T, which stands for technology. And there's a lot of focus on storytelling and strategy. So I want to know, is there any focus on technology as well?
A lot. So we can definitely both speak to that. We have a variety of classes that looks at the ways in which technology is understood, and both creating strategy for how to think and talk about technologies, but also understanding those technologies. The class that many of our panelists discussed, Future of Marketing, is a class both about marketing and also about technology. This year, we are offering a new class called Communication for Emerging Technologies. Again, the content of the class is both understanding those technologies and also thinking about strategies around how to be maybe someone who was in a role that communicates about those technologies. So we have a number of classes that speak to that.
If I was to give you a summary, one line that explains to you what is the relevance of a communication leadership master's degree right now, is it gives you a seat at the table. The idea is that as a communicator, somebody who is supposed to serve as a node of communication or transformation and translation within an organization, you need to have a certain amount of literacy in the technology to be able to be seen as credible, to be making sense of what kind of communication needs to be happening. And so we intend our curriculum to give you that credibility, that literacy, so that you can have a seat at the table, so that you can lead, but bring the storytelling is really meant to make sense of the world for people. And so, and part of what's not making sense to a lot of people right now is how technology is making things more complicated, more complex, and how it's amplifying things. And so while we want to understand that so that we can decipher that for the rest of the world. On Thursday, I'm invited to a dinner of exclusive leaders in the communication field, a lot of heads of agencies, and we're talking very specifically about artificial intelligence technology, and they want to know what we think about it. I've given workshops to Intel all day about storytelling, even though that's a technology company. Same thing for Microsoft, because they see that that confluence is really important. And to have a seat at the table as a communicator, as a communication leader, is so important. It's actually more important now than ever before because of this concern around ethics and because of inclusion and because we think that technology is moving too far, too fast without us having a say in it. And that's what you guys get to do. You need to be advocates, and that's what leadership means at this level.
And maybe I can just add from a like learning hard technical skills standpoint. I taught for many years in the program a storytelling class that was video, essentially video documentary production. But what we try to do is create the space and time and resources and opportunities for you to learn those hard skills. Whether it's software or video shooting and editing, stuff like that. But we don't, sit you in a class and teach you to do that. We create the opportunity to do that and teach more of the theory and the concepts and what works on a higher level. And then, we have the equipment and the labs and all of that stuff so that you can kind of learn the technical stuff on your own, if that makes sense.
Jill tells me that we have time for one more question because we want to also interact with everyone. We'll kind of have an hour or half an hour or so to be able to say hi to you and talk to you and answer your individual questions. But collectively, does anyone have a last question?
So, out of curiosity, do your students, both past and current, ever do like a dual degree with your Masters of Comm Leadership degree? So for me personally, I also have this interest in social impact. I have both cross-sector experience. Right now I work in education, and I'm kind of still on the fence between doing an MBA versus an MPA. So I think the reason is that in undergrad I did marketing, and I see the huge long-term benefits of how this can, make a difference in my future career. But, I'm just curious to know if any students have done a dual degree with this, and what's the case for it, and what's the case for to not do it.
I'll briefly respond to it, and I'll turn it over to Jill too, who has a background has a business background, but then moved on to the program, so maybe can speak to the differences between the two degrees. But we have a number of students who start in one degree, so say they start with our digital media degree, and will take an elective in the communities and network degree, and at that point they see that there are opportunities for classes and also topics that they really want to explore. The degrees are complementary, so once you complete the core classes, you do not have to repeat those. So you basically take the core classes with your cohort. But moving forward, it actually offers you, I think, something Cavalry spoke to, a kind of an experience in both internal and external styles of communication, both an understanding of technologies, but also issues. Now, there's a possibility to get a glimpse of both from a singular degree perspective, but you can also dive deep. We had a number of students in the past couple years who have actually completed both degrees. Usually towards the end of their first year, they will decide if they want to pursue the second degree after they've completed a series of courses. So you don't have to decide from the get-go, but we have had a number of students.
Was your question about doing the 2 degrees in the Comm Lead program, or were you actually looking at doing an MBA in our program at the same time?
No.
Yeah.
So just looking into other programs
Yeah.
in conjunction to the communication leadership. So for me, I've been kind of exploring MBA, MPA, so Evans and Foster, as well as like other schools in the area and outside of Washington State. So I found out about this program through my boss's colleague. He works at my current employer, and hearing things about his experience had made it, intriguing for me to want to come after this intersection. So I'm just curious to know, like, do students or have alum done a dual degree with your program with the external non-communications program?
Yes, we have had at least one student do the Foster's MBA and the MCDM degree, and we have a couple of students currently enrolled in the program. One, I think, is doing a law school degree along with the Comm Lead degree, and so you can do that. It's what's called an informal concurrent degree by the graduate school, and so they let you count a certain number of credits towards to dual count basically for both degrees with the approval of both programs, and it depends on how large the other program is in terms of credits as to like how many that will be and which they are. So you work with the advisors of each program to figure that out, but you get that little break where you can count some credits toward both. And then it's mainly just a concern of if there are core classes, making sure they don't conflict, like with our core classes that you're required to take your first year. You'd want to be, researching that once you get into both programs to make sure that you're not going to have to be in the same place at the same time.
All right, so as Akin mentioned, we're happy to stick around for the next 20 minutes or so to meet with you informally. We're deeply grateful for the time that you've given us for this evening just to come check us out. As you can tell, we're all really passionate about this thing that we've created and we're part of. We think it has a lot of momentum. We think it's more timely than ever in terms of what's happening in the world, both at a professional level and a societal level as well. And we will continue to make this the most relevant education that anybody can get right now in terms of what it takes to affect change that matters to all of you. So thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to engaging with you as you think about applying to the program. Have a great night.
Oh, great.